Both fighters ultimately settled on $2.5 million, the most ever paid an athlete in any sport for one performance.
Commissioner, may we proceed, Ali? What do you say you're going to do to Frazier?
All I say, here's the agitator. Have a coach After the fight's over and Frazier has caught hell, I'm going to jump over the rope and finish Cosell.
Immediately, sides were drawn. Writer, Larry Merchant.
More white people were rooting for Frazier, who seemed to embody more of the old-fashioned virtues of prize fighters as a strong, hard-working, silent type, and Ali was this handsome, devilish, outrageous character who was taunting this rather plain-looking, not very verbal, but very worthy prize fighter, and so sympathies broke along those lines.
Writer, broadcaster, Dick Schaap.
If you were anti-black, you rooted for Joe Frazier. If you were anti-hippie, you rooted for Joe Frazier. If you were pro-Vietnamese War, you rooted for Joe Frazier. Not meaning that Frazier himself personified any of these things, but that's just who you preferred. But if you were young and at all rebellious and cared at all about style, you rooted for Ali.
The fight became a worldwide event. 1960s counterculture guru, Dr. Timothy Leary, was living in Algiers at the time.
It was unbelievable that these lower middle-class people in a small Algerian village would care about, a boxing match in America. And they were just going crazy. And I was reading the papers all around the North African belt, Tunisia, Egypt, Iraq. They were cheering Ali. They knew that he was against the American government, and they knew that he was against the war, and they knew that he was persecuted by the government. Basically, he was an anti-American against American politics, which we all were.
Jack McKinney was living in Belfast, Ireland.
There had been a split in the IRA. Charlie Hughes, who was lieutenant in the provisionals, was shot dead by the officials in Belfast, and an all-out feud began. So you had two underground guerrilla forces in a state of war. And believe it or not, there was a stand-down called later that day. The chief reason they called the truce was that everybody wanted to watch the Ali-Frazier fight. Such are the footnotes of history, right?
Another footnote was that independent backers who put up unprecedented guarantees outbid traditional fight promoters to stage the show. Jack Kent Cooke.
For the first time, instead of relying on the people who were running the auditoriums, the theaters, and the arenas, Arthur Young and Company, which was my auditor at the time, engaged some 100 or 150 young auditors to go check the receipts at every one of these places. The net result was, I think, that we drew $29 million, and that's really the beginning of all the pay-per-view stuff that we have today.
The referee, of course, wore a bow tie, while the universal appeal of the event was expressed in the conservative dress of businessmen, politicians, and underworld chieftains, to the extravagant period costumes of black fans, to the casual look of showbiz titans. Bert Sugar.
Just to look across from ringside and see a photographer for Life magazine, Frank Sinatra, and to look down the ring and see that one of the announcers for Closed Circuit was Burt Lancaster. The crowd, it was glittery, it was showy, it was New York. Probably the biggest night in the history of Madison Square Garden, and probably of sports in New York.
Larry Merchant.
Now I can still summon in my mind's ear this incredible guttural roar from the crowd in the seconds before they were about to start the fight. But people can hardly believing that this was finally going to happen.
By the fourth, you could see that Ali was beginning to tire, and that Frazier had cut the distance and was beginning to land. And in the 11th round, Ali took a massive amount of punishment.
Frazier's trainer, Eddie Futch.
I often tease Joe about the one instance in the 11th round, which he hurt Ali very badly. But Ali, being as smart as he was, he didn't want Joe to know how badly he was hurt, so he exaggerated the stagger. But Joe, not being sure that he was hurt as badly as he feigned to be, he walked casually over to him. And in those few brief seconds, Ali was able to pull himself together again. And we called it the long walk.
Bert Sugar.
He just was battered, and yet Ali wouldn't go down. But in many people's mind's eye, the fight